Let me introduce you all to the Fyrun Region, a brand new Pokemon Fakemon region based on Iceland with lots of inspirations from Norse mythology. Now, this region is created by Pokemon Region, so you can find on both Instagram and on YouTube, and I'll link them both in the description for you to check them out. And in this region, you can choose between either Pokemon Brawn or Pokemon Brain. Now let's get straight into it. You can choose either Emma or Eric as your main character, and the professor of the region is Professor Aspen, based on the Aspen tree. So that continues the theme of professors being based on either plants or on trees. Now, of course, Professor Aspen is going to give us our starters, so let's get into them. The grass starter is Berry, which I think is a very cute looking bear. Its feet and its paws are quite large, and we can see it's got some berries, almost like a wreath around its neck with those berries on there as well, which is quite nice. It evolves into Shrubbion, which I absolutely love the name having Bjorn in there, which means bear. That shrubbery on its head almost looks like a bit of a bear's head or maybe a wolf's head, which you would see in old Norse mythology times. And then lastly evolves into Berserker, again a fantastic name, based on the berserkers that were around in Scandinavian times, the Vikings, very, very vicious fighters. And it's definitely got that look of the bear or the wolf head on its head coming down, and even the way that fur is plaited, definitely looking like it's Viking inspired, which is quite nice. And Berserker has become a grass and dark type now. The fire type starter is Folklore, so it's obviously based on a horse, and you can see it's got like a bit of a flame on the top of the mane there. It's interesting how it's tied up more like a ponytail rather than a mane that comes down over its neck and back. It evolves into Brenne, so it definitely looks like it's got a bit of an attitude now, that kind of adolescent look that we see for a lot of middle evolutions there, and the colorings changed quite a bit. And then lastly evolves into Heselda, which is now a fire and ghost type. Now this is based on Sleipnir, which is Odin's horse, which is actually an 8-legged horse, and these sort of 4 ghostly wisps on its legs here are actually phantom limbs to become the 8-legged horse of Sleipnir, which it can use in battle or to run into the afterlife. Hence its ghost typing as well, so really cool inspirations there. And our water type starter is Crabub, which is obviously based on a crab, and it's interesting, it's got like those bubbles around its eyes, which is nice. Evolves into Nauticlaw, so those claws are actually becoming quite large and quite sharp now. It almost looks like it's got a bit of a shell helmet on its head too. And then lastly evolves into Vicrab, obviously has the word Viking in its name. Really, really interesting design. Those claws are massive now. It's got like that big Viking-esque kind of beard and a Viking helmet, even though it has the horns, even though traditionally Viking helmets didn't have the horns. Now let me know which starter you're going to pick down in the comments. I'm going to choose Berserker. Absolutely love the name and the design of this Pokemon. All right, let's go into Route 1. In Route 1, of course, we're going to have our traditional Route 1 bird, and it is Arctern. So it is based off an Arctic tern, which is looking like a pretty nice Pokemon. I do like the design of this. It evolves into Hawkryo, so obviously combining Hawk and Cryo in there as well. We can see some ice elements, almost like little icebergs or ice caps on the head and on the top of the wing there. Its beak and talons are quite large, actually. And it actually changes quite a bit as it evolves into Gyrfalcold, which is a flying and ice type now. Obviously, we've got that ice element on there. We can see like a bit of a beard as well. But now it looks a lot more like a griffin. We can see it's become quadrupedal. It's got the hawk legs, but like paws on the back instead. Our traditional Route 1 rodent or normal type Pokemon is Lamini, which is based on a lemming. And I absolutely love this. I think it is so cute. It's just like a little fluffy, cute ball. It evolves into Lamass. So obviously getting some mass. Now it's getting bigger. It's getting larger. So a bit of a chunky boy. And then our Route 1 bug is called Wiggleen. So it's based on a caterpillar. But what I really like about this is it's kind of like muddy and dirty kind of look. And there's gemstones in this Pokemon as well, especially on the back there. It evolves into Crystallis, so of our cocoon Pokemon, of course. Still got those gemstones over there. This Pokemon is very, very hard, like your Metapods and Cocooners and stuff like that. And then it emerges from that Crystallis and it becomes Diamoth, which is a bug and rock type, which is a really cool combination for our Route 1 bug. Based on a moth, of course, and it's still very rocky, and we can see the gemstones on the wings there. Really aesthetic, this Pokemon, I think. I like this design a lot. Continuing through Route 1 now, we have Grumper, which is a pure ghost type Pokemon. And this is actually based on the Yule Cat, which is a traditional Icelandic Christmas folk tale, which is about this very large and very vicious cat. And it evolves into Chillynx, so now it's got more of a lynx element, obviously like a bigger cat there. It's become a ghost and ice type now. Next is Furzum, which is a pure ice type. It is based on a puppy, of course. Very, very cute, very fluffy. And it evolves into Snowwarg, which is an ice and ghost type Pokemon, which is based on a wolf form, also based on a warg, but it's also based on Fenrir, who is a monstrous evil wolf, which has a massive part to play in Ragnarok, which is like the end of the world in Norse mythology. But Fenrir is actually bound by chains to keep it from destroying everything. So this sort of look here, this icy chain element, is what is constricting Fenrir or constricting Snowwog, which I think is a very cool tie-in here. And then we have Tricoon, which is a pure dark type Pokemon, which is of course based on a raccoon, but it's also a very tricksy kind of Pokemon. You can see the white almost looks like a mask over its face, which makes a lot more sense when it evolves into Masquerade. So combine the raccoon with the mask or Masquerade. This is definitely like a thief stealing kind of Pokemon, which makes sense when it's a raccoon, I suppose. Then we're going to go into Kisseltoe, which is a grass and fairy type Pokemon, obviously based on mistletoe, but there's a few like Christmas design Pokemon coming up now. Obviously in Iceland, lots of Christmas themes, and obviously the weather, very icy. Definitely kind of makes sense. And then we have Duplicate, which I think is a very, very awesome idea. Duplicate is like a gingerbread man, but as you can see, it can transform into lots of different Pokemon and lots of different typings. So originally just a pure fairy type. Fairy and electric type kind of looks like Pikachu. Fairy normal type kind of looks like Eevee. We've got our 3 starter Pokemon here for grass, fire, and water. Next is reindeer and normal and water type Pokemon. And I absolutely love the little water droplets that are coming on the tip of their antlers there. It's such a cool little idea. And it evolves into Ictharine, grass and water type now. So it's got rid of that normal typing. And it's got a massive like bushy, grassy kind of beard. And again, those water elements on the antlers have now become like wisps of water now, or maybe more like waterfalls. But this is based on Ictharine, which is a massive stag in Norse mythology that actually stands on top of Valhalla. And it is huge with massive antlers. I really love that it's inspired by that, because that is really, really cool. And then next we have Klaus, which is kind of Santa Claus inspired again as well, but almost looks like a little bit of an imp as well. It's interesting, the candy cane colors for the horns there, which I think is really, really nice. Next is Niklaus, which definitely looks a lot like Krampus, I would say. Definitely looks very evil and very mischievous. Still has those horns that look a lot like Krampus as well. Even like the tail, I actually like the tail. Almost looks like a barbed harpoon at the end there, which is quite nice. Next is our Pika clone for the region, which is called Shakiru, so an electric and ice type Pokemon. So it's based on a stoat. It definitely looks like that with its long, slender body. And because it's an ice type, I love that the little cheeks that it has, that a Pikachu would normally have red cheeks, it's got little light blue cheeks that definitely look like an ice element combined with the electricity along the yellow stripes and the whiskers, which is really cool. And now we're going to go into a few regional typings, our first ones we see today. So first we have FyrTnian Lapras, which looks like a Drakkar or a Viking longboat, which is such a very cool idea, because typically Lapras obviously is the Pokemon that transports people across the water. So it'll be perfect to have a Pokemon inspired by a Viking longboat to be able to do that. And then next is FyrTnian Wailord, and obviously based on a narwhal. So it's got a massive icicle on its head there to show the narwhal horn. So really cool idea, and just like lots of ice elements along the tail, the back, the flippers. Next is FyrTnian Borea, which I think is a really cool name. Boar and warrior combined together. And this is actually a regional version of a different region that Pokemon Regions has created. So this is based on Gullenbursty, which is also meaning gold mane or gold bristles, which is a massive boar that is ridden into battle in Norse mythology. It's got massive tusks. It's got like shields with spikes and armor on its feet as well. Next is FyrTnian Zubat, which is really interesting. There's like not much of a face. I guess Zubat doesn't have eyes anyway, does it? So it's cool that they keep that element, but it's also combining stalactites in this. So you can see we've got the rocky elements down on the bottom, and almost like rocky drips of stalactites coming down on the wings as well, which is really nice. Of course, evolving into FyrTnian Golbat, we can see the stalagmites and stalactites on the top of its head and on the bottom of it as well. And then of course, lastly, the FyrTnian Crobat, completing the trio for this line. Next, going into a few water Pokemon for the region. So the Pokemon you're most likely to fish up is Cascot, a pure water type. Just looks like a little fish here, just like a little cod, which is quite nice. And it evolves into Catlantic, based on a catfish, but it's a very long, elongated kind of body. We can see we've got the whiskers for the catfish and some teeth and like cat ears as well. But I absolutely love the tail for this Pokemon. Such a cool idea to have a trident there. Next, we have Searib, which is actually a fire and water type Pokemon. So you can see it's almost got like a bit of a spatula kind of look on the tail here, kind of a chef's hat on the top, and little fiery whiskers on the end here, which is really cool. And that kind of cooking inspiration you can definitely see here in Lobstew, giving us a bit of a chef look, a big chef look hat on the top of its head there, of course, but it also looks quite muscly and quite strong. I think it's like the pecs that it's got and like its stance makes it look quite strong, but it is the chef Pokemon. And then we have Oil Luga, which is a water and poison type. It looks really sad. It's like covered in oil, obviously in the name there as well, and combined with a beluga whale. And that theme theme continues as it evolves into Centicrude. So cetacean is that family of like dolphins and whales and those sorts of animals. So definitely combining there to create our oil-covered Pokemon. The oil has covered almost the entire of the body here. And then next is Woolvolt, the pure electric type Pokemon. Obviously has Volt in its name, electricity inspired. It's also based on a Wolverine as well with very, very sharp claws there. I love the electric designs over its eyes, which is nice. And evolves into Savoltaic, so now electric and fighting type. Those claws are massive now. Look at those electricity, like the lightning bolts coming out of its claws. It's become bipedal now as well. Definitely it's got those like sharp elements and stuff like that you would see with a lot of electric Pokemon. Before we go any further, I want to show you guys the gimmick for the region, which is called Forge Form. Now, over 90 Pokemon in the region have a Forge Form, and essentially during the battle, your Pokemon can transforge into a powerful living weapon, and the trainer uses that weapon to battle while still using the spirit of the Pokemon to help it in the battle as well. Now, during this, the Pokemon has access to all 4 of its normal moves, as well as a new finisher move. Now, there are many different types of Forge Forms, including different kinds of weapons like axes and bows and arrows, as well as shields as well. Depending on the Pokemon, depends on its Forge Form weapon. Now, I'm going to show you some of the Forge weapons while I'm talking about it, but there is much more to see on the Instagram and the YouTube for Pokemon Region. Definitely check them out in the description to get full information about the entire decks, because I'm not showing you the entire decks in this video. There's lots more to see on their YouTube and the Instagram, so go and check them out. And while we're looking at these, don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well for lots more Fakemon regions. But with that, let's continue on with the decks. And now we've got 2 evolution lines that kind of work together. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So electric and bug type, we have Vesplug, which is based off a wasp. As you can see, it almost looks like a charger or a plug or a port for its stinger. That becomes a little bit bigger now. It's almost like most of the body here actually is that plug that gets put in. So very interesting. Almost kind of looks futuristic. I think with the eye, like the one long eye. And I did say it has a counterpart. That's because we have Sproutlet. So obviously bees go to flowers, so it makes sense that a plug also has a port that it goes into as well. You can see the flower here on Sproutlet has the plug that the other Pokemon would go into, which is a really cool idea. And of course, it's evolution Flowerwort as well. So we've got 2 flowers here, kind of like a Roserade, Roselia kind of look here. And the flowers that's holding have the plugs. Then next is Flam, which is a pure fire type Pokemon. I love this. It is so woolly. That wool is actually ignited and it's kind of smoky and fiery and got embers in it. And then evolves into Rammable, which kind of sounds like Flammable, which I think is so cool. Again, all that wool, you can see the little fire parts in it, like the embers sparkling along, and a very smoky kind of look here. Then next is Muley, pure fighting type Pokemon, based on a donkey, of course, but it's also got like a Bruce Lee inspiration. You can see the name like Hitmonlee as well. And of course, it is kicking, which makes sense. Definitely continues that inspiration when it evolves into Don Kick. That is a massive kick. Look at that. I absolutely love that. Definitely more like a Hitmonlee kind of style here. And then we've got Claytor, which is a pure ground type Pokemon, which of course based on like some cattle. And we've got the horns for cattle, but I love, as we saw earlier as well, like the braided fur as like that Viking kind of braid. And then it evolves into Ordsloan, which is now a massive cow. This is actually based on Ordumla, which is the cow that fed milk to the frost giants in Norse mythology. So very woolly. Of course, if you're surrounded by frost giants, you need to keep yourself warm. So very woolly there. And then we have Aquatic, which is based on an orc, which is a kind of seabird. So really nice there. Water and flying type. And then evolves into Harbird. So it looks like it's got much bigger now and kind of got that sailor look to it. Almost looks like the front of the body and the hat on its head definitely makes it look like a sailor. And then we have Roaster, which I think is a very cool idea, combining Rooster and Roast together. Fire and flying type, obviously based on a rooster, but the fire coming off of the head there and along like the bottom of the face is really cool. And then evolves into Cockatrice, which is based off a cockatrice. That sort of mythological beast. It's got like a dragon body but a rooster head. And then we have Limbu, which definitely looks like a zombie hand coming out of the ground, which is kind of creepy. This is a ghost and ground type. I love that it's got like an eye in the middle of the hand as well here. I can kind of imagine this being like the evil version of Diglett coming out of the ground. And then evolves into Drowgrave. So you can see it's obviously come out of the earth now and looks like a full-on zombie. It's actually based on a Draugr. It's even got a little flower on the top of its head because it's emerged from the earth. Then we have Ocortex, which looks like a water Pokemon because it's based on an octopus, but is a pure psychic type Pokemon. As you can see, the head of the octopus is massive and it's got Cortex in the name because of the brain. So this is obviously very very intelligent kind of Pokemon. Next, I want to show you of like convergent evolutions that we have for the region. So think of your Diglett and your Wiglet. So the first one is Teethan, which is kind of like the Palafin of the region, obviously based on a shark though. But this evolution in Jawful is definitely a lot like a Finneas and has that superhero kind of look, standing up on its fins there, and we can see it's got the emblem on the chest as well. The other convergent one I wanted to show you is Retri, which is kind of like the opposite of Absol. So it's based on retribution rather than absolution. So it's still got like a kind of a look from Absol, like the body and the paws and the look in the face. Really cool how it's like the opposite of Absol. Next is Draseed, which is a grass and ground type Pokemon, definitely looking like a seedling, and you can see some little roots coming out for the arms there, but it does look very happy. It evolves into Midgarden, which is again a really cool name because Midgard is the name of our Earth in Norse mythology, where we are living right now. Definitely looking like a tree now, and you can see the legs are coming through the soil there. And it evolves into Yggdrasil, which is based on Yggdrasil, the world tree that is holding up all of the realms. Definitely looks like an older tree as well. Almost like it's got a bit of a mustache here in the soil, and definitely more of an angry expression now, not so happy as it was before. And then next we have Elfay, which is combining like an elf and a fairy together. It's a fairy type Pokemon, of course. It evolves into Dwarf, getting a little bit larger now. Definitely has like a feminine kind of look. I think the coloring and the eyelashes definitely give it a bit of a feminine look here. We can definitely see the male and the female variations here as it evolves into Hulderfolk. These are based on the Hulderfolk, which in Icelandic folklore are elves, and they become visible at will, but otherwise they're normally invisible. Then we have Termite, which looks very angry. This is a bug and fighting type Pokemon, of course, based on a termite, but then evolves and becomes bipedal when it evolves into Fistmite. Those massive mandibles almost look like arms now, but you can see the arms definitely got a very strong expression there. And then lastly, I'm definitely kind of getting Machamp vibes here. I think it's all the extra arms, but Exterminate, very, very strong Pokemon, massive chest, very muscle, almost like it's got some abs here as well. Couple more Fyrunian versions next. We've got Fyrunian Ekans, which looks a lot like a snake, of course, obviously. It's now poison psychic type, but it actually has a different evolution. Instead of evolving into Arbok, it evolves into Redder, which is actually Adder backwards, keeping the theme of Ekans and Arbok being able to be read backwards. Then we have Fyrunian Trubbish, which looks very, very sad. Still keeping the Trubbish theme here. You can see the arms are like the plastic rings around cans. Poison and water type now. Again, a different evolution. Instead of Garbodor, it evolves into Garbosian. So definitely focusing on the rubbish theme, but now more so in the ocean rather than on land. Then we have Fyrunian Salander, which is a poison and ice type. Kind of has like some icicle snowflake elements down the back, which is nice. And of course, we know Salander normally evolves into Salazzle, which is a female only. Now we've got a male only species. We've got Salizzard. So bipedal now. Again, got that sort of strong design. A few of these Pokemon have got really big, strong, muscly chests, and I think the stance as well. Then next we have Resonat, which is based on a gnat with a very long proboscis out the front, but that's actually like a horn, and this Pokemon plays music, and apparently if there's a lot of these Pokemon around, they are very, very loud, which makes sense. Then next we have Squirrel, which is obviously based on a squirrel, but combines a scroll as well. We can see the tail actually looks quite flat, and as it curves around like a scroll does, and it's got some runes, some Nordic runes along its tail to make like a scroll. And then evolves into Ratatoskroll, which is now a much bigger version of a squirrel. The tail is still kind of similar, how it's got like a scroll in it, but this is actually based on Ratatoska, who is a giant squirrel that runs up and down the world tree to deliver messages, which is really cool that we have a Pokemon inspired by Ratatoska. And then next we have a new evolution in this region, a dragon type evolution. Looks really, really nice. I like how it's got like the scale look along its body and along the like the legs and stuff as well. Next we have a couple of evolutions for previous Pokemon. So this Pokemon Phantom, which is a ghost and dark type, obviously evolved from Spiritomb. Really, really cool. We can see we've got like that rock that Spiritomb breaks out of. Same with Phantom. And the shape is kind of like a witch's hat is what it looks like. But we can see we've got claws and stuff coming out as well. We have a Dugong evolution called Selkie, which is based off of Selkie, which in Norse mythology is an animal that kind of transformed from a human to a seal and back and forth. So that's what Selkie is based off. And we can see it's kind of got like the Aurora Borealis coloring in here as well. And then we have Nilfilhim, which is of course a Jinx evolution, looking like that traditional like Viking opera singer kind of look here with the dress and like the horns from the hair here. And its name combines him but also Nilfheim as well. And to put it as simply as possible, Nilfheim is like an icy version of hell. And then next we're going to go into the two fossil Pokemon for the region. So first is Regaloth, which is an ice and ground type Pokemon. This is based on the Megatherium, or the giant ground sloth, which is now an extinct animal, of course. Its evolution, Letherium, is definitely looking like the Megatherium now. And it's interesting that the claws are like webbed claws, so I wonder if this is much of a swimmer as well. And the other fossil Pokemon is Serod, which is an ice and electric type and is based off of Rhino. And the massive horn is making like a lightning bolt kind of shape here, so definitely sees like the electric typing and like the eyebrows as well. And then its evolution is Rhinorm, much woollier and much bigger now. That horn still has the electric bolt shape and is much larger now as well. I love like the little lightning bolts, almost like an end of a beard here as well. And then we have Duoma, which is a pure dragon type Pokemon. What I really like about this is that it has heterochromia, which is two different colored eyes, looking like our baby dragon that we traditionally see. Now, Duoma has a split evolution based on whether you're using Pokemon Brain or Pokemon Brawn. Firstly, Wisdoma is a dragon and psychic type Pokemon. Obviously the dragon for Pokemon Brain, and we can see that in the coloring, but also in the very wise look that this dragon has. It's got like a bit of a wizard's orb between its horns. It's even got like a bit of an old man wizard beard as well. Alternatively, if you're on Pokemon Brawn, you get Valormir, which is now a dragon and fighting type. Definitely has the beard, but the wings are much smaller now, and it definitely has more of a fighting stance. I definitely love both of these designs though. Very, very cool. And although it kind of looks like it, that's actually not a pseudo-legendary for the region. I'm going to go into the two pseudo-legendaries for the region. The first one is Hailmet, which is an ice and dragon type. So this is an ice pseudo-legendary, and the other is going to be a fire pseudo-legendary. So Hailmet looks like it's got an iceberg over its head to make like a helmet. And it evolves into Ymir, so getting much bigger now. You can see that helmet almost has like spikes on the side of it as well. But this Pokemon evolution line is based on Ymir, which was the first frost giant to ever have been created. And then its final evolution is Yotundra, so combining Tundra with Jotun, which is like the race of the giants. You definitely see the ice is sort of taken over a lot of the body now, not just on the head, but also along the back and the shoulders, and it's created like massive iceberg kind of fists here as well. And then the opposite of that pseudo-legendary line, the ice line, is now the fire line, starting off with Kindlad, so combining Kindle, but obviously Lad like a little Pokemon as well. This looks really cute. It's a fire and dark type. You can see it's got like a molten rock kind of covering over its body. It evolves into Surtorch, which kind of looks a bit more like a raptor or a dinosaur now, I think. But the fire rock elements, you can see we've got horns on the head there as well. This pseudo-legendary line is more so based on Surtur, which is like a fire giant compared to the ice giants we saw in the other line. And then it evolves into Magnarok, which I think is a really cool name, combining magma but also Ragnarok as well at the end of days. We can see the fire, rock, molten lava kind of element taking over a majority of the body, similar to what we saw with the ice version as well. Next, going into the legendary Pokemon for the region, and there's three main legendaries for this region, and they're all based on very important gods. Firstly, we have the box art legendary for Pokemon Brain, which is Ilruz. Now, this is based on Loki, which is the trickster god. Now, this Pokemon is very intelligent. It's a psychic and dark type Pokemon. It's got a really long tail, which almost looks like a bit of a staff as well, but that cheeky grin that it's got definitely reminds me of Loki. And then the box art legendary for Pokemon Brawn is Thorma, which is based on, of course, Thor. We can see the massive Mjolnir that it's got on the end of its fist here being Thor's hammer, and the electric elements, we've got like the horns here, almost like the Viking helmet as well, but the electric like spikes coming off the shoulders here. This is a fighting an electric type Pokemon, and it kind of does look like maybe like a bit of a bull, a bipedal bull. It makes a lot of sense that the Pokemon Brawn legendary looks a lot like this, looks very, very strong. And then the final legendary, the main legendary, if you will, is based off Odin, the father of Loki and Thor, the previous two legendaries. This is a ghost and fairy type. This is called Eidolon, and we know it's based on Odin. Very wise. It's got that big beard. It's missing an eye as well as Odin is, because Odin gave up his eye for knowledge. It's got like a bit of a cloak here as well, but I absolutely love this Pokemon. It definitely has a presence like Odin would as well. What an amazing region. Let me know down in the comments what your favorites were. My favorites were Berserker, Ictharine, Magnarok, and Wisdoma. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe for more Pokemon, and if you like Viking inspired Pokemon, also check out the Nordic region that I've also covered as well. Thanks.